family, it is your man CRB Jr., Courtney Robert Brown Jr. here at Motown Mafia Podcast. Big Boss Filmworks in the house. My brother and partner, Lou Stevens, in the house.
What up?
Again, Lou has been here day one, as they call us, as the kids, I think nowadays call him a day oneer. He's been behind the camera, again, was one of the producers of the award-winning documentary, Motown Mafia, directed by our band Al Prophet. Me and Al also produced that thing. Available on Amazon, on Tubi TV. I know a lot of you guys out there know us from, or know my brother over there at True Crime Story, Eddie Jackson Jr. Shout out to Eddie Baby. You know us from YouTube. This thing all actually began with the book, Motown Mafia, Memoirs of a Kingpin's Kid. It morphed into the award-winning Best True Crime Story, LA, New York Film Festival, Select Bronze Lens Film Festival, Atlanta, Movie Select, Martha Vineyard Film Festival. Again, so if you really want to get the breakdown, you guys have seen, you got Uncle Butch's in here, you got Uncle Rudolph in here, you got Brother Jap, first guy to move the bag for Eddie Jackson. Dr. Carl Taylor is in here. Got Scott Bernstein chimed in on the project. Shout out to Scott. Gonna be bringing Scott back to do some more stuff with us. It was just a great project. Now looking back on it, 10 years later,
10 years later, man.
We didn't know.
Whoa.
We're gonna talk about that because it's a great entrepreneurial story, man.
Whoa. Yeah, man. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. But what we're gonna talk about today is, as everybody knows who covers and follows this kind of stuff, Alberto Martinez, better known as Alpo, was gunned down at an after-hour joint in Harlem. Got a lot of stories about after-hour joints in Harlem, but different episode. We won't go into my exploits, but it does kind of tie back into it. So, Alpo character, of course, made famous in urban America with the depiction of Cameron in the movie Paid in Full. I'm not going to get all into why it happened, who did it. Everybody's really familiar with that guy's character. I will just say on this, being a second generation person and some of the other posts, when you grow up, as I did, with your houses being on the front page of the newspaper when you're 10 years old, you get a little different perspective on it. So, whether, I was of age like here during the YBI era, and, I know in our culture we get all excited, these young guys wearing the gold chains and the fly cars, and I get all that, and I like nice things and enjoyed it too. But when you already grew up, really, like the first wiretap case the government ever used, the wiretap in the history of the state of Michigan for a narcotics case, was the Eddie Jackson, Courtney Brown case. Wiretaps had never been used, right? So I grew up as a kid hearing all these conversations of Eddie and the dad and my mom talking about the damage that these wiretaps had did to their case. So when I come of age and me and Eddie Jr. start running around the streets and niggas be on the phone talking crazy, I'd be like, what's wrong with you people? This is not a game. You will go to jail for talking stupid on the phone. But people didn't get it because they hadn't grew up in it, and they didn't. And I say all that to say, so same thing, when I look back, when this Rich Porter, Alpo, AZ thing was going on, what I want to talk about is what Alpo did and was involved in, how it did kind of impact my life. Because, so I'm taking you guys back to 1987. 1987, what's going on in my life and working for the old man, because by 87 now, I would have been approaching my senior year in college, but I have now stopped going to college, at least temporarily, because I'm really working with the old man. He's doing his thing out of the Bahamas, hooked up with a guy by the name of Basil Miller, aka Mr. B. Shout out to the Basil Miller family down there in the islands. Basil Miller is just a big fella, a hustler's hustler, internationally plugged in. Personally did business with Carlo Leader and the Medellin cartel. Those are familiar with Norman's Cay down there in the Bahamas. He's one of the architects of that. him and the old man, it got cool, both serving time in Atlanta. So Basil then got out, Pops then got out. It's 87. The what is Kevin Child's book calls it, the crack era. Great read. Did a review on it. If you didn't see it, check it out. But great read again. Shout out to the big homie Kevin Child.
Shout out
To the crack era. It's just gone crazy. So Pop with his access with Mr. B is bringing in the bag. He's getting his things like at 13.5. It landed in Detroit because we cut out all the middlemen. Pops is bringing the bag directly from the Caribbean into Detroit. This guy Basil's thing was set up so large, and those, if you don't know the story, I had incidents where when I was going down to the island to work as the money carrier, money launderer, however you want to phrase it, I got popped by the DEA. Thank God, God's good that no case came from it, but it really got me hot. It was the first time that I got on the radar of the authorities. A mistake made with a ticket printing. They didn't put Junior on my ticket. Authorities thought I was my dad. By the time it all gets sorted out, I get to walk, but the problem is I had been interrogated and questioned by the DEA, and anyway, it caused me not to be able to go to the Bahamas anymore to see Mr. B. The follow-up plan was because Mr. B had took a liking to me, and he really had told the old man, I really don't want anybody but your son to bring me my money. This guy really kept himself insulated, which is why you guys have never heard of him, because this is what you got to remember. Everybody don't get caught, and the biggest people in the game, you never even heard of their name. Know that.
he was Sosa, basically.
He was the black man Sosa. Educated in England. His kids were flying planes back in the 80s. If you read Big Man on Campus, that character, General Cashmo, is actually based on Big Man on Campus. Anyway, Big Man on Campus now available on Amazon and Kindle. But in that last work we did, the character, the fictional character of General Cashmo is actually based on Basil Miller. So, can't go to that. Basil was hooked up with some Jewish bankers. This is again how I really learned how the world of international finance and narcotics and the whole hustle. Anyway, basically I just had to now get the money to these guys in New York. They would funnel it through some other legitimate measures, get the money to old boy. As fate would have it, I had a good friend of mine. You know him, Brother JC, James Brother Stein, Jimmy Coleman. Great guy, not involved in the streets of any of that, but just great guy. We went to high school together. Shout out to Brother Steinman. He was finishing up at Columbia University, right? So at this point in my life, I'm coming to New York on a regular basis. When I would come to town, I'd catch up with my friend from home, Jimmy Coleman. I'm walking around Columbia University with Gucci briefcases, and $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 in my briefcase. I'm susceptible, yes, and so I get being young and foolish. Despite being educated, I was not as ridiculous as some of my peers who were living that life with flaunting our money and flaunting the lifestyle we were living. But I had some silliness in me too, as my father would say. I was susceptible to nigga shit. That's what the old man always refers to when brothers behave in irresponsible fashions, is they go that nigga shit again. And I was, so anyway, I'm walking around an Ivy League university with a Gucci briefcase with $80,000 in it, and kids are like, who's this kid? But as fate would have it, so it's New York. It's New York, it's 87. You got to know in 87 still the world was changed, although the crack era had began. The stigma about partying and using coke, I'll be transparent, back in those days I used to party a lot. So it was very tempting being in New York. My daddy moving the crowd back home in Detroit. I've relocated to New York to really kind of just run the point for getting this money from Detroit to New York, back to old boy in the islands through these bankers. To be out and about in New York City And you know, you're young, you're 23, testosterone running all through your body. It's very tempting, and I think hopefully you can feel to want to tell people, look, I know you boys up here in Harlem doing your thing, but you got to know back home in Detroit, where I'm from, we doing it as big as anybody. Whether you're in D.C., New York, L.A., I don't care. In the D, we getting it as good as it can be got. And those who know me tell me that I have a healthy ego and sense of self, and somewhat of a command of the English language. And if I want to talk that shit, I can talk that shit with the best of them. But before I can even get deep off into that, so my man Jimmy's at Columbia. One of Jimmy's basketball teammates and friends, and guys stayed in the same dorm, was a guy by the name of Tony Childs. Shout out to Tony Childs. Tony Childs is Kevin Childs' younger brother. Shout out to the big homie Kevin Childs again. So I meet Tony Childs through my man JC long before I ever bump into Kevin Childs, or to be honest, even know who Kevin Childs is. Now, what I do know is this boy Tony, as they say, game recognized game. Tony ain't the average African-American kid at an Ivy League school, because the first time I meet Tony, he's wearing this full-length Louis Vuitton Dapper Don custom-made goose down coat with the matching Louis Vuitton hat, and he's showing some pictures. And he, you know, he knew and had heard of, this is the kid from Detroit, this Jimmy's friend is walking around campus with the Gucci briefcase with the 80,000 in it. So anyway, we just some young brothers up on an Ivy League campus talking the game, and Tony says, he's not even talking to me, I think it's me, my man Money Walt, shout out to Money Walt down there in Florida. It's me, Money Walt, it's Jimmy, it's Tony Childs, maybe Big G, big shout out to Galen Sorrell out there in the Bay Area practicing law. You know, this whole thing, just to backtrack, so when I caught that just changed my life, because when the DEA pulls me off the plane in Miami, it leads to me having to move to New York. And when I moved to New York, I started doing this whole thing up at Columbia campus and meet all these other people, and it did. So in that case, you know, the DEA changed my life in a positive way. Because if I don't get pulled off the plane in Miami, then I never moved. I never moved to New York, and if I never moved to New York, I don't even know if we're here talking.
Nope.
Right now. So anyway, Tony's just kicking the game, and Tony's like, man, this summer I'm gonna stay on campus. He like, cause my brother, and he's speaking, I don't know he's speaking of Kevin Childs, but he says, my brother says I can't go back to the Bronx this year because it's getting crazy and they're kidnapping and killing people. And he don't want me involved in that. So Tony don't really know my backstory at that point.
Okay. But
I'm hearing this, and I'm reading in the newspapers all of this stuff about this Rich Porter, Alpo thing. You gotta understand. So I'm at those who know New York, I'm at 116th and Broadway having these conversations. The McDonald's where unfortunately Rich Porter's nephew's finger was left was at 125th and Broadway, 9 blocks away. It's a 1, 2, and 3 train subway stop right there. I was always at that McDonald's, right? And so at 23, and I'm to be honest, looking back, I'm a spoiled kingpin's kid with a real cushy money laundering hustle going on. But now, I didn't come from the D, right? And I just left Detroit in '87, which is, the mayhem is cuckoo. So you already had that best friend shit and all that had already began. Niggas was killing each other left and right. Half the reason why Pops wanted me out of the city was the madness that was going on in the D.
A lot of death back then.
A lot of death. Brother Demetrius got arrested, so he was still running around. My family got arrested, they sold cousin Lala and cousin Tony. They dealing with Big Ed Hansen. Eddie messing with Demetrius. I'm hearing all this stuff in the streets. White boy Ricky just caught his case. They shooting at him. Everybody, it was just madness in the D, right? So I done escaped, I done got out of the crosshairs there, went to New York, and then I'm hearing all this madness going on there. So when Tony told me about his brother not wanting him to go back to the Bronx because of the shit that's going on with Alpo and Rich Porter and AZ and all of them, I think to myself truly, I said, you know what? It's true. I thought to myself, I said, Courtney, what you gonna do is stay your ass right here on this college campus around these kids. Don't nobody need to know nothing about you and what's going on back in Detroit. Because you're a long way from home. You're a long way from help. This ain't your town. And just play the spoiled black kid from Detroit role, hanging out with his Ivy League friends. And because of that conversation about what was going on with Alpo and AZ via Tony Childs, you know, that really changed the whole way I moved in New York for my first 2 or 3 years. So I stayed away from uptown, you know, except for, let me be honest, except for occasionally making a little trip up to 145th and Broadway. You know, we had some broads and we was doing some partying. But at that point, I stayed out of the after-hour scenes. I would get a little bit more immersed into the Harlem I shouldn't even say that. So the closest I ever even came, so that was like from 87 to 90, I just ducked that whole scene. I played the college role with my friends. When I did party, we was going down to party with the fancy white folks at Nell's and the Palladium, Webster Hall. And I left that street thing again, and that was a result because it was tempting. I was hearing about all these nice, you know, Bentleys, and you know, I did go to Perks sometime over there on 121 in Manhattan, but that was a little bit more laid back scene. But I really ducked that whole Harlem thing because when Tony Childs told me about what was going on, and he was a born and raised New Yorker, and he was laying low, I was like, oh, I do not need to be out of pocket here, right? Because these kids are playing for keeps.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I didn't want none of that smoke. And again, I realized I was a long way from home, and it was not the time. So, you know, life is funny, man.
Yeah.
Life is funny. So
never know, man.
That conversation with Tony Childs and then reading what was going on, and then I was really spooked because when they left that finger at that McDonald's there, and I was always at that McDonald's at 125th, and this whole drama, that whole paid-in-full drama is happening 2 subway stops from where I'm at all the time, and I'm just in this new town, New York, and it really changed the way I move. And I thank God, Luke. You know, God works in mysterious ways. If I'm not privy to that conversation with Tony, I don't know what actions and how I would have been moving, and what negative outcomes could have come of that, right? But the craziness of the world, again, shout out to Kevin Childs, big homie. I would end up, only people who ever knew a little bit about my background, obviously Walt and Jimmy knew, you know, they spent time, people would spend time with me on campus. So like on page 124 of the crack era, and I didn't even know the man at this time. Kevin's talking about his store, Boss Sneaker. Boss Sneaker was located on 8th Avenue between 126 and 125th and 126. It was the heart of Harlem and a commercial district, right? Now, Kevin Childs right down the street from me. We 4 stores from each other. I still have not connected the dots because I have insulated myself so much from what is going on in Harlem. I don't even realize that my friend Tony Childs' brother is the big shot they're talking about at Boss Emporium. Thank God.
Right.
But one guy did peep because game recognizes game. There's a guy he spoke about on page 125th of the crack era. Leon Blue Jr. was from Brooklyn. He had a jewelry shop, a jewelry business in the city-owned Mart 125, directly across the street from the Apollo. That's where my shop was at. My first store, African Nights, was inside the Mart 125. So it was Black Man Jeweler, Blue, guy by the name of Carlos, shout out to Spanish Avenue, and my shop with the Coogis, right? The Mart was opened in '86 for vendors to move in, blah, 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 blah. And Black Man Jewelers was like the #1 jeweler. He had like one of the largest, I think, African American owned Rolex. So anyway, though, this guy, those who know New York in that era, if you want to see Blue, I believe if you go like to the Diamond Diva 10th anniversary party, it's online. He is credited as being one of the early backers of Puffy when Puff was just promoting parties. All the rappers would come through and kiss the ring of Blue. Again, this is an era, you got to remember now we're in the early 90s. Street guys are still making way more money than rappers. And Blue was giving big parties. Another guy that was known back then, Peter Shute, was giving big parties. They were doing a lot of guys who was getting major money in the streets at home would throw parties. I wouldn't attend any of them. But me and Blue are neighbors inside the Mart 125, and Game does recognize Game. So it was obvious to me that this guy Blue was the man, or one of the men. There was no doubt he was a big fella. You could tell by the way he moved. You could tell by the amount of respect he got. He was always, minked out, iced out. But even more than that, you could tell because he actually was a real jeweler. He was a brother. He knew how to cut diamonds. He knew how to melt gold down.
No, that's unusual.
Yeah. He wasn't.
Real unusual.
He didn't just have Black Man Jeweler as a front. It was a real jewelry shop. So I would go down there, and occasionally I like jewelry, and I'd buy myself a little something. Plus, even back then I was about supporting black business. And one day I was buying my broad, Artie. Shout out to Artie. I was buying her a watch or something, and Blue's there, and he looks at me, and he just smiled. He said, "I see your business other places is doing better than your business in the Mart." And I just, Game recognized Game. Now prior to this, I don't know, Blue must have got a little violation or something because he had left the scene for about 6 months.
Okay.
But I'm real, and you gotta pay tribute. When you in somebody else's castle, and again, I got a healthy ego, but I'm in Harlem. We ain't running Harlem. We help run Detroit.
Yeah.
So I gave Blue a Coogee sweater and a whole Coogee outfit when he had come home from his little violation. And he really was touched by it. And he would walk by, and he'd walk by my spot, and he'd be like, "Oh, look at," another story, we'll tell you the story why they called me Joe Boxer. And he'd be like, "Look at Joe Boxer, Coogee sweaters now, doing better now." But again, shout out to Brother Blue, because from that moment on, whenever he would be throwing his parties, and Coogee's on fire right now, he'd be like, "Hey, y'all," and he'd tell his crew and all the guys he was getting money with, he'd be like, "Y'all need to go down there to Joe Boxer's place and buy your sweaters. You'll buy y'all Coogees and your outfits for the party from my man down there." So Game recognized Game, and he really helped my business. The fact that it was known that Blue was blessing me, that I was all right with Blue, and Blue was telling his people, "Y'all need to come support Joe." So he was about the only one in Harlem that kind of peeped my card and was like, "Bruh, you doing a little bit more than selling Coogee sweaters, bro. You ain't living like you living just from selling Coogee sweaters." Because by this time now it's the early '90s, and Pops has got that Pakistani plug thing at full tilt. So I had a $7,000-8,000 a week allowance going back then. So yeah, it was cuckoo. So just shout out though, but crazy times. Yeah, how that whole Alpo thing. Again, never met the man, never met Rich. A lot of people, Money Walton, them, and obviously Tony Chance, people I didn't come in contact were deeply into that circle. But yeah, hearing that story from Tony about what was going on and the kidnaps, that really impacted me, and it really helped keep me in my lane. And I thank God for that. You got anything on this little?
No, I'm gonna ask everybody out there that may have had intertwining stories. Drop some stories in the comment sections. We're addicted to your comments. We got a bunch of people we need to shout out in the comments, like my man Flint.
Oh, top of the food chain?
Top of the food chain.
Yeah, it's the other brother. I don't have my phone and stuff with me. But yeah, we're going to start giving you guys a shout because we got a lot of day oneers in our comments section. And
a lot
we appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we read these comments. Without you, it's no us. You feel me?
Right. And we appreciate the input. And again, we're trying to do some different things. You saw we're doing some stuff with the Carl Martin story. We're going to really start to unpack that. I think it's a fascinating story. Big 50. Got a couple guys from, hopefully from the PA crew. That was a big, big crew here in the city. Actually overlaps a little bit with the BMF thing also. So we're moving this thing.
Yeah, and we'll be putting together shorts, little mini movies for Big Boss Filmworks, YouTube, and related social media. So, like Courtney said a few posts ago, drop us an email with your picture cards and your what do you call them, your reels, if you got any kind of acting reels. We'd love to see it because we're going to be putting people out there like that. Big Boss Filmworks at yahoo.com or bigbossfilmworks@gmail.com, which is mine. And this is Lou, and this is Big Boss Filmworks. Come and holler at us.
Holler at your man. It is going down. I can leak this much of it. We are working on the script. The treatment is done.
Yeah.
We've got some direction. This thing is going to happen. So we're talking about the movie on this project, on the legend of Eddie Jackson, the Fat Man, and my dad and Black Butch and Great Dolph, and that whole situation and how it impacted the streets of Detroit.
The Big Boss Filmworks cinematic universe.
Yeah, man, the whole orbit. But those of us close to it understand when we look at what's going again with BMF and all that.
It's all related.
It's all related and connected. So, once again, wow, how that era helps impact my life, man.
Big time.
Between the DEA getting me to New York by pulling me off the plane to Miami, and Tony Giles breathing some knowledge on me to keep me and my spoiled Kingpin's kid self in my lane and away from all that madness that was going on uptown.
Yeah. And the D.
And the D. Yeah, because I was like, damn, I left the D to come to this? Wow. Streets are crazy. But that's it, fam. We got a lot more coming at you. Any other last words, Lou?
Hey, yeah, hit the like, share, subscribe, and the notification bell. Hit that if you want to see more content when we post it. It'll come up on your phone or your iPad or whatever it is you're getting your content from. Motown Mafia Podcast. Check it out. Follow it anywhere you get your podcasts. Right now, we're mainly on Spotify and Anchor.
All right, there it is, fam. We're out. Big Boss Filmworks, Motown Mafia Podcast.
Big Boss Filmworks and Big Boss Books presents Courtney Robert Brown Jr.'s follow-up to the book Motown Mafia. Motown Mafia, big man on campus.
My internship was kind of in how the world of international finance and international criminal activities overlap.
Corey Black Sr. wanted Corey to go to school to bring legitimacy to the family, but Corey had other plans. While in college, with the help of his friends and his girlfriend, he starts and grows a successful drug operation.
5 minutes later, two agents, now I know they were agents, but at the time I see two guys go to the right, another two guys start walking towards me. They stop at my seat and they go, "Grab your bags, DEA, come with us." Needless to say, this is not the fun part of being an intern.
Corey finds himself conflicted with his responsibility to running the family business and his obligation to his college studies. However, he'll have to make things work in his favor if he wants to remain the big man on campus. The names have been changed to protect the guilty and the innocent.
I'm taking economics and business 101 and marketing. And your economic teacher's telling you about a business plan and how you get a small business loan. And, it's kind of the hypocrisy of the world, because I'm like, that ain't how the real world works.